Hey, Happy New Year! I wanted to make a video last week, but since it was New Year, everyone was playing music loudly and I couldn't record anything, so I just had to drop it. So since it's New Year, I hope you have some New Year resolution. If you don't, I can give you one. And that's why I'm making this video, right? So I have many friends who visit my channel, but they are not very intimately familiar with the domain of philosophy, which I am going to be talking about a lot in this channel. It's going to be one of the primary focuses of this channel. So I thought I should sort of make an introduction to philosophy kind of a video, just for people who have never ever delved into the subject. So I should just make something that stays on my channel, and anyone who is new to philosophy or new to my channel can go and check out this video, and they could probably follow along the future videos that I will be making about philosophy. So let's just start with defining what philosophy is. Now again, this is also sort of a matter of debate. There isn't actually like an agreed upon definition. I'm sure you can find many definitions across the internet. If you Google the definition, you would find like at least 5 different definitions, and each of them would be sort of compatible, but they would also be kind of probably talking about different things. So I just wanted to give you my perspective of how I view philosophy. So I just take philosophy to be a discipline of asking and answering questions. Sounds simple, right? But that's kind of the thing. Philosophy has many branches, subdomains, and the domain which you are going to be interacting with is going to be dependent on what kind of questions you're asking. So if you're asking questions like, actually let me just list down all the main branches of philosophy. So we have metaphysics, epistemology, logic, ethics, aesthetics, and political philosophy. So these are the subdomains of philosophy, and I just think that philosophy is sort of like a mother to all other disciplines. So even if you take something like science or mathematics, they would also be derivatives of philosophy eventually. I'll get to that in a second. So let's go one by one. Let's talk about metaphysics. What is metaphysics? Metaphysics is composed of 2 words, right? So metaphysics is like meta and physics. So we probably know what physics means. It's a discipline under science about physical phenomena like atoms, molecules, etc. We have a general conception of what physics is. Now, meta just refers to some. It's a prefix which just means about or above or something like that. So you could literally translate metaphysics as about physics. So under metaphysics you will be having positions like metaphysical realism, which means a position where you believe that the external world exists independent of your mind, and it's not that. So like this camera exists, the screen that you are listening to me out of exists, the sun around me, behind me exists, and it's just not it exists independent of my mind. It's not just sort of an illusion that exists in my mind, and I am sort of like in a white room who is just hallucinating all of this. So that kind of a position is called metaphysical realism. So that's the question it's going to ask. It's going to ask whether these things exist independent of our mind. Now there are other things metaphysics talks about, like consciousness, free will, determinism, space, time. A lot of these questions come under metaphysics. And I am not particularly well versed with a lot of metaphysical positions. I have some metaphysical positions, but I'm just not that up to speed on metaphysics. So if I'm going to be talking about some metaphysical stuff, it's either me just telling you something that I have already thought about, or is something that I'm currently exploring. Now let's move on to the second one, which is epistemology. Again, by the way, I want to mention that this is not an ordered collection or anything like that. You can go in any order, but I'm just going by the order that I learned in. Epistemology is a study of knowledge, beliefs, etc. So the questions that you're going to ask under epistemology is: what is knowledge? What is belief? Is a particular belief justified? What do we mean by justification? A lot of these questions would come under epistemology. Now let's go to logic. What is logic? So we might be using the term logic in everyday life to mean different things, but logic is also a word used to describe a branch within the domain of philosophy. And logic is just the study of correct reasoning, arguments, etc. So if you're going to be, it's just deriving inferences based on some given premises. So I would give you an example of an argument. An argument, again, whenever we hear the term argument, we kind of picture this scene of two people just yelling at each other. That is one construal of the term argument, but within philosophy, arguments just means premises from which a conclusion is derived. A set of premises and a conclusion. So I can give you an example of an argument. So let's say if the sun is setting, then it is an evening. The sun is setting, therefore it is an evening. So that is an example of an argument. So arguments could have different properties. We can get into all of that stuff maybe in a later video, or I can link you to resources which you can check out to learn more about it. So you can check the description for that. Now let's go on to ethics. So what is ethics? Ethics is the branch of philosophy concerned with right and wrong behavior. Again, ethics particularly interests me, and I think will be of particular interest to the audience of this channel, because I anticipate that this channel is going to be mainly watched by vegans who I have already interacted with, and they have similar views, or maybe they don't, but it's just that ethics is intimately tied with veganism, and that's why this I think would be interesting to you. So ethics again has like each of these branches which I mentioned even before have subdivisions, but ethics specifically has like descriptive ethics, normative ethics, applied ethics, and veganism is an applied ethic. So it's you're going to ask questions like is this action moral or immoral? How many people think that this action is moral or immoral? What do we mean by moral or immoral? That's like, personally, what do people in general mean when they use the terms moral, immoral, good, bad, all these kinds of terms? So these are the questions that are going to be discussed under ethics. So let's move on to aesthetics. So aesthetics is a branch of philosophy which is about beauty, ugliness, and all these related concepts. So you could ask questions like, is this person beautiful? Is this painting ugly? And things like that. So that's the kind of questions which are going to be asked under aesthetics. What makes good art? What is art? Questions like that. And then comes politics. So politics is just like talking about governance. What is governance? What would be a good form of governance? How do we, ensure the well-being of the masses? Questions like that. Now, I haven't explored political philosophy much, and I am not even aware of any serious academic political philosophy stuff. Actually, I'm going to check out that after shooting this video, but whatever. Now there are other sub branches which I just take to be sort of like overlapping regions between the other main branches that I described. So things like philosophy of science, philosophy of religion, philosophy of mathematics. All these are just sort of like overlapping regions. Why? Because if you ask, let's take something like scientific realism. So scientific realism comes under philosophy of science, and scientific realism has three commitments. So if you want to be a scientific realist, you need to hold three commitments. One is the metaphysical commitment, then is the epistemological commitment, and there's a semantic commitment. So again, you see that you could just reduce it down to either a metaphysical question or like an epistemological question or something like that. So I just take these kinds of other fill of branches to be overlapping regions between, which is why I kind of find it useful and interesting to imagine philosophy as sort of an ocean, and this ocean is going to be like, let's say, the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean or the Indian Ocean. Now you see, it's just one giant water body, right? And there is going to be a lot of mixing and matching between these water bodies. So you could be like, the Indian Ocean would just eventually open into the Atlantic Ocean, and there's just going to be water exchanging. So it's just a huge water body, and these demarcations like Pacific, Atlantic, etc. are the branches of philosophy, even though there is a lot of overlap, which is why I like to think of it this way. Now, you might be wondering after watching this, right? There seems to be a lot of stuff to discuss in philosophy. It's an extremely abundant field, and you might be wondering, is it even worth pursuing? Like, why would I put in so much work? And you might even think that it's not your cup of tea. That could be true. I don't entirely dismiss that. I don't make the claim that philosophy is for everyone or anything like that. But even then, I would just suggest that someone just learns the very basics of philosophy, like even basics of logic and basics of epistemology will take you a long way. Because if you learn logic, you can catch yourself making bad arguments and correct them. And if you learn epistemology, you can find better ways of acquiring knowledge, which is concomitant with your goals, your values. And learning about a lot of this felt to me, I can give you an analogy, right? So it's like when you don't have glasses on, you're looking at everything in a blurry situation. Like everything is blurry. You can see something, I can make out there's a tree, there's a car going by, there are some people. So I can get by with that, but when I wear my glasses, I can actually see the clarity. I can actually see the expression on that person's face, which I can't without my glasses. And I could see the fruit that's hanging on the tree, which I can't see without the glasses, right? So that's how it feels to learn about all of these new domains which I have never explored. And the one thing that philosophy has taught me, which I think is an indispensable attribute, is to be able to revise your position, to revise your beliefs, to change your beliefs, and to examine the flaws in your own reasoning. And I think a lot more people could use that attribute. And we are living in an era where a lot of insane views are just considered normal. Just take non-veganism, for example. It's considered normal to holocaust billions of beings for taste pleasure. And we, as a species, we never thought about it. Like, the majority of the population never thinks about the consequences of their actions and whether it aligns with their values. Some people are aware that what they're doing is conflicting with their values, but they continue doing it anyway. Probably because of some superseding desire. I don't know, I'm not sure. So here's the takeaway, right? As I run this channel, from the day I started this channel to the day this video will be, my beliefs could have changed. My beliefs could have completely. I would have either assumed an agnostic position on many of my beliefs right now that I hold right now, or I would have rejected them in favor of some other belief, right? And that's going to happen. And when that happens, it will reflect in my content. So if I am holding some belief which is changed and challenged, and like I'm convinced to drop it, I will make a video about it. I will make sure to put it on record that I have been wrong, and I don't personally see it as a bad thing to admit that you are wrong. People think it's desirable to be right the first time. I don't see why. I think it's more important to have the attribute of being able to change your views in light of new evidence and more convincing arguments than to get everything right the first time. Some people get it right the first time. Most of us, I'm not sure, maybe most of us don't. I certainly don't. And it just helps to take this instance of being wrong and turn it into an opportunity to be right. And that's kind of the outlook that I live with. And maybe you should too. Think about it.